I'd like to introduce you to the work of a lesser-known modernist architect named Homer Rissman. It was my grandfather in the early 1950s who commissioned him to design and construct a townhome in the Lakeview neighborhood in Chicago, which was owned by our family for over 50 years. This talk will focus on 4 experimental townhome complexes that he completed during his brief 5-year period from 1949 to 1953, working as both a young architect and independent developer. He then left Chicago for better opportunities out west, spending the remainder of his architectural career in California and Las Vegas, primarily designing and updating hotels, resorts, and casinos. After his passing in 2001, the Rissman family donated a collection of his original papers and drawings to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I was fortunate to visit the archive last fall. Drawings from his early Chicago work included a variety of design types, from single-family homes in the suburbs to restaurant proposals. However, it appears his most successful constructions were the townhomes, and 4 additional townhome designs remained unbuilt but revealed the trajectory of his design evolution. Now, it appears Homer's designs likely represent the earliest post-war experiment for modernist townhome design in Chicago, implementing industrial precast concrete materials and methods. Beyond his innovative technical approach in creating this new typology, a far more interesting story emerged. The townhomes are post-war artifacts, reflecting the dynamic social and economic forces that were at play for the city's mobile middle class. As an entrepreneur, Rissman's very survival depended on creating a market appeal, not only through aesthetics, but also through economic viability of his urban housing proposals. Now, it's worth noting that Homer's story as an architect truly starts with a larger legacy of influence. His father, Maurice Rissman, having graduated from the Armour Institute in 1919, partnered with fellow alumnus and established the esteemed firm of Rissman and Hirschfeld. Trained with a Beaux-Arts architecture education, the pair quickly ascended to prominence, undertaking the design and construction of numerous notable hotels and luxury lakefront high-rises throughout the prosperous building boom of the Roaring 20s. Interestingly, Maurice personally purchased 2 lots in East Lakeview, designing 2 neighboring Italianate villas, a more elaborate one on the right for a client, and a second one on the left for his own family. It was within this stately home on Wellington Avenue that Homer Rissman was born in 1927 and raised as a child, presumably fostering an appreciation for architectural design. Now, I've included this aerial view of the area surrounding his home for 2 reasons. One, I'd like to highlight the unique section of the city that, despite being prime real estate between Lincoln Park and Lake Michigan, really remained largely undeveloped, save for a handful of estates that were constructed in the 20s. But secondly, this view coincidentally captures a snapshot of the halted residential development for the following 2 entire decades of the Great Depression and World War II that followed the stock market crash of 1929. It's easy to visualize Homer growing up with this backdrop of these empty lots and imagining the architectural possibilities of a post-war era. In response to a pressing need for wartime housing and support for unemployed architects, the government established architectural teams tasked with designing war and low-income housing. And as part of one such team, Rissman's father, Maurice, was tasked with the design of the Francis Cabrini green housing. Now, this initial phase consisted of these stern barrack-like row houses, which have been described as having concrete framing with brick masonry cladding. It's unclear how much this may have influenced Homer's later use of concrete. And in a very tragic twist, before its completion, Maurice unexpectedly passed away of heart failure while Homer was just 15 years old. The following year, Homer graduates high school early, joins his brother Marshall, who's already studying architecture at the Illinois Institute of Technology. Both brothers among the first pioneering students fortunate to study under the directorship of renowned Mies van der Rohe. The IIT education emphasized principles of functionalism with a curriculum focused on exploring new ideas of space, structure, and application of modern materials and technology. Up Upon completing his studies, Homer returns to Lakeview, confronted by strong socioeconomic and real estate forces shaping Chicagoland's post-war landscape. In addition to the return of veterans, which created a surge in demand for housing, much of the existing middle-class population of Chicago began migrating to the suburbs, seeking refuge from the urban congestion. Affordable, independently owned homes with modern designs became highly sought after. These buyers demanded modern amenities, such as radiant heating and access to outdoor space that created a connection with nature. Suburban living was advertised as providing privacy, security, and a sense of community with interaction among neighbors. Basements offered additional versatile space, while the inclusion of garages accommodated the growing prominent role of the automobile. Rissman needed to produce a clever, competitive urban townhome vernacular to satisfy these market demands to persuade families to remain in the city. Concurrently, Homer would have encountered intense competitive pressure from seasoned and well-funded developers and architects who likewise saw the area's potential value as a hub of modernism. In contrast to residential high-rises that were developed in the 20s that were marketed toward the elite, post-war modern high-rises were to employ materials and methods that offered an economical solution on a large scale and were to act as a model for contemporary middle-class living. Noteworthy examples are developer Herbert Greenwald collaborating with Mies van der Rohe on the adjacent block of Sheridan Road, as well as Milton Schwartz's 320 West Oakdale just around the corner. Here, Rissman's initial townhome project on Sheridan Road served as a prototype and proof of concept, and was the area's first completed residential construction after the war. His subsequent designs included the same structural concept with only minor adjustments to exterior, material selection, and spatial orientation. Beyond testing out a new construction approach, Rissman utilized an innovative financial tool for the Wellington complex that was successfully reused at subsequent complexes. Rissman marketed his design to multiple buyers who would then collectively purchase the full lot as a trust and eligible for FHA loans specifically for multifamily construction. Through the trust, the construction costs were shared equally, with additional customized features paid by individual homeowners. The multifamily complex was then subdivided amongst the owners, granting each individual ownership over their own townhome. The layout of the 8 units is in a row house configuration with cantilevered second floor and projecting roof, and corbelled extended party walls articulating the division between each home. In this current view, it's evident that the majority have been modified their front facade materials, with only one home retaining the original steel window framing. Notably, 2 front entrances are present despite the narrow street-facing dimension, one main and one separate one for the kitchen. This feature can be seen in his next work, but later disappears, possibly reflecting a changing attitude toward the kitchen as the center of domestic chores or service. Each modest, boxy, flat roof home is approximately 2,000 square feet. Rissman utilizes concrete block framing, precast concrete joists, poured concrete slabs incorporating radiant heating coils, and large floor-to-ceiling steel glazing framing. The kitchens were typically positioned at the front clapboard-clad facade with a large open living plan and full glazing to connect to the rear patio. The second floor would contain 2 to 3 bedrooms, each with floor-to-ceiling glazing and an interior skylit bathroom between. Here we have elevation drawings showing the original glazing configuration. Here, typical wall section showing the concrete joist configuration. Construction photograph here from the Sheridan Road elevation with structure and cladding complete, with the exception of steel framing, glazing, and doors. And here I found a unique in-progress construction photograph of the rear elevation, which shows the concrete block party walls and the installation of the precast joists in progress. Next, following Rissman's initial success, his design expanded to formulate a true residential complex, with 12 individual units organized in a zigzag configuration around a shared courtyard. The units are 2-story with a half-story basement. The excavated soil was repurposed to create the base of the courtyard and elevated entrance. In conjunction with a stone wall street interface and hidden stair entrance, Rissman creates a harmonious blend of privacy and community above and apart from the urban fabric. The zigzag configuration of the front and rear facades positions the exterior glazing to correspond to each of the cardinal directions. We see an inclusion of two entrances again, which disappear by the next iteration. Again, many of the original steel frames have been replaced according to individual taste, and that has interrupted the original cohesive design of the complex. The rear of each townhouse contains a modest courtyard with light wells to illuminate the basement. Despite the small size, with the floor-to-ceiling glazed exterior, Rissman succeeds at creating a private indoor-outdoor connection. In the lower left image, the basement reveals the exposed concrete joist and bridging construction that otherwise remains concealed beneath ceiling panels. Here, Rissman has formulated an early concept drawing with minor material changes and window design modifications incorporated later on. This in-progress construction photo highlights the precast joists in place in conjunction with the formwork used in pouring the concrete slabs. Here we see the framework for the structure, land and stone cladding, and initial steel framing before glass installation occurs separately. Next, the townhomes on West Stratford are facing the street. They're raised and set back from that street, creating a semi-private outdoor space and a buffer between the home entrance and the street interface. Rissman uses a slightly tinted limestone cladding, but repeats the internal concrete structure. Additionally, at first, the large wood massing appears out of scale and a bit confusing. It was only after seeing this preliminary sketch that I understood the original design intent was to be as a planter with overflowing botanicals to balance the space. All appear to be defunct for that usage today. The striking distinction here is in Rissman's orientation and layout choice for the complex. Unlike conventional back-to-back lots in Chicago that are typically separated by an alleyway, here the construction spans uninterrupted between Stratford and Cornelia streets. Almost imperceptible from the street, the walkway leads to 6 additional units nestled in a narrow court, each containing a small private patio in the rear. And lastly, the Surf and Sheridan complex, Rissman's final townhome complex construction. It's his largest and showcases his adaptability to the evolving preferences of his target clientele. 18 units are arranged in blocks of 6 each, 2 facing each other across an elevated courtyard, with a third facing a side street, each with a private elevated front yard. There is no deviation from the precast concrete joist and block structural framing. In fact, the joist is exposed and simply painted. The main difference lies in cladding material choice. Namely, in addition to the land and stone at the base, Rissman adds large limestone panels with anchorage attachments. We can see where the rough land and stone limestone has fared far better with minimal maintenance, whereas the steel anchoring appears to have suffered corrosive effects, causing many of the limestone panels to spall. Most notably, Rissman incorporates garage space under the courtyard, reflective of increased automobile ownership and catering to the growing demand for urban parking. He explored this need further in several other designs that remained unbuilt. Now, the discovery that Rissman is an early experimenter using this industrial structural system sparked my curiosity regarding the advent of this technology. I traced the origin of the precast concrete joist and bridging system to a 1931 patent invented by Howard Young of Michigan. The system, known by the trade name Lithe Ibar, found applications in industrial and commercial constructions, particularly in the Midwest. I discovered little about the inventor Young. However, I did find a 1942 legal suit filed by Young for patent infringement. Interestingly, the judge ruled in favor of the defendant, claiming that an identical system had already been patented in France in 1926, thereby invalidating the claim to proprietorship. During the 1930s, an interesting development emerged from a commercial standpoint. Numerous newspaper articles, both in 1932 and 1935, promote housing using concrete construction, emphasizing the benefits of its fireproof qualities. I discovered the architect was an employee of the Portland Cement Association, and it became evident that these were actually advertisements aimed at promoting the novel material in home construction. Similarly, PCA utilized other advertising pamphlets to espouse the advantages of precast concrete. There was little residential construction activity during the Depression, and it appears the anticipated widespread success did not materialize then as expected. During World War II, the government officially initiated extensive research and development efforts focused on building materials, with the aim of creating safety building standards, including precast concrete joist systems. However, as the war concluded and building materials became more readily available again, Rissman recognized the potential for economical housing construction beyond simply the industrial applications. Now, by the mid-1950s, we see a proliferation of medium-density townhome constructions at the city's periphery, albeit it typically was using traditional brick masonry and wood construction. There are some noteworthy modernist examples that followed as well, though. For example, we see the I.M. Pei and Harry Weiss design for urban renewal in Hyde Park on Chicago's South Side, including clever concrete frame townhomes with brick cladding. Similarly, Mies van der Rohe's Lafayette Park in Detroit of the same era, where these townhomes complement tower structures beyond. In form, these do bear some similarity to Rissman's final complex. However, they were in a park-like setting, removed from privacy constraints of Chicago's typical street-facing environs. And I'll leave you with a picture of Homer later in life. And thank you so much.